Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I need some hats or something to keep my head warm with winter coming very soon. I had a viewer by the name of Anne. She sent me an email, or she sent me a few emails of different types of hats that she's made for her cancer journey. And one of them is from a YouTuber called Trish Newberry. So I'll pop a link for her video in the description below. But what we're going to be doing today is making the same kind of a beanie cap in two different ways. Let me show you the hat first. So this is one of them. It's just a very simple cap to put over your head, keeps you nice and warm. And I've actually been using this for the past week or so when I go for my morning walks with Coco, and I have a great big black fluffy hat over the top. This is another one that I've made, same style, but what I've done with this one is cut strips and just layered the individual pieces of fabric. So today I'm going to show you how to make one of these using your regular straight stitch sewing machine. If you don't have an overlocker or a serger, you can easily make this with a regular sewing machine. If you have a zigzag, that's great, but I'm going to show you just with a straight stitch. And the other one, I'm going to use my overlocker to make this. If you have a cover stitch machine, which I do have at the shop, then you can have a really nice cover stitched edge like what you can see on this band here. But we're just going to be using the overlocker and the sewing machine today. It's a really simple project. I've made so many of these, you can make them up in about 10 minutes or less. Let's get to it. So the fabric I'm going to be using is just a cotton interlock. It's got a stretch going one way, but not the other, or very little stretch going the other way. So that way, and, oh well, yeah, very little this way. I'm going to make two caps with one piece of fabric, and then I'll show you how to make this one with 3 strips. And the cutting instructions will be up on the screen for you now. Let's start with this one here that's got the 3 pieces. I'll set those aside for the moment because I want to build this back up to one piece of fabric. We have our 5.5 inch strip, a 3 inch strip and a 3.5 inch strip. Open the fabric out. We're going to imagine that this is a printed fabric. So this mark that we've got along the top here is the printed side. So it would be this side faced up. We want to place the right sides together. So our printed sides will be together. Place the middle piece over the top of the bigger piece. Line up your edges evenly. And just be gentle with your fabric. You don't want to be pulling it out of shape. And we're going to take this to the overlocker and sew straight down here. If you don't have an overlocker, just go to your sewing machine and sew straight down there. If you've got a machine that has a zigzag on it, then you can go and do a zigzag as well as a straight stitch. Once we've done that, we'll open the fabric out and we'll place this one on top, but I think we'll come back and do that in a moment. We'll place those 2 layers of fabric underneath the presser foot. Remove your pins as you're going. So once you've stitched those together, we'll open this fabric out and we're going to place the next piece right along this strip. I'm going to match up the printed sides, place those right side together, pin the layers together, and we'll sew that one as well. So what I've done is ironed the layers nice and flat, and I've pressed the overlocked edges toward the shorter side, or what will be the top of the cap. Even though my overlocking is very loopy, I'm going to make a decorative feature of the stitching here. So this will be the outside of my cap, whereas this one here that I've made, all the overlocked edges are on the inside. And you can't notice that you've got the 3 different layers. So that's why I've decided to make a decorative feature of this one. What we're going to do now is take this to our sewing machine and just sew this layer nice and flat all the way across both of those seams. So I've placed my presser foot over the top edge of that seam, and I've increased my stitch length to 4 because I want this to be able to still stretch. So that one's secured in place, and we'll do the same for the other row. Okay, so that has allowed for the stretch to still be available in the cap, and that's just plain on the other side. So you can actually have this as your outside if you prefer. If you have a cover stitch machine, then you can actually use this decorative feature with your cover stitch machine and have that stitched on the outside of the cap. Now that we have one piece of fabric again, all of our fabric pieces are now going to be constructed in exactly the same way. So what we want to do with this piece, we want to zigzag or overlock that edge. If you don't have a zigzag machine, you don't have to do anything at all, which is what I will do with this piece of fabric here. I'll keep this one using the straight stitch machine. So I'll overlock the top edge here, and with this one I will overlock the top edge as well. With this one it won't matter which side is faced up because this seam won't be seen when we close up our cap. All right, the top edge of our cap is serged or overlocked. Imagine that this is the printed side of your fabric. You want to bring the right sides or the printed side together. And we'll overlock this edge as well. This one here will do the same. So this is going to be the outside of my cap. I'll bring this edge together. This one's a much lighter piece of fabric than the blue one. And if we're going to use our regular straight stitch sewing machine, then you're going to bring the right sides together. So this is the printed side. And we'll sew down along here. Remember to remove your pins as you go. And with the straight stitch machine, I'm using the same stitch length. My stitch width is probably about 1/4 of an inch. It really doesn't make much difference what you use. Now, if you do happen to have a zigzag on your machine, you can go and zigzag this edge as well. And you could also zigzag around the top edge. Okay, now we have 3 different caps. All of them are inside out at the moment, including this one. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this piece here. We've got the top edge overlocked and our side seam along here. Turn that around, and we're going to bring the side seam up to the folded edge of fabric. And we're going to pop a pin in the centre, and then we'll fold that in half again, and we're going to pop a pin on that fold as well. Open that out. Where this pin is here, we're going to put a pin on this side. Open that out. If you've pinned the back one to the front, you can just reposition that. So we now have 3 sections pinned. What you want to do at these pin marks, I'll just make a mark here. So where these markings are, all we're going to do is sew from the top of the overlocked edge down to the finished stitching area here. So we're only going to be stitching about 1/2 centimetre or 1/4 of an inch. You'll just do a back stitch there, 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 and also on the edge of the overlocking here. So just a back stitch in those 4 positions. From now, we're going to do exactly the same thing with all of these caps. So I will just show you this one here until we get to doing the band at the bottom. So now that we've made those markings on all of our caps, we've got one more thing that we need to do, and that is along the bottom edge, which will become the band around the top of your forehead. What you're going to do is fold the fabric up 5 centimetres or 2 inches. We can now go and overlock the bottom edge of all of our caps as well. With the one that we're using, our straight stitch, if you don't have a zigzag, we'll just leave it for the time being. If you have a zigzag, then go and zigzag the bottom edge. We'll go and overlock the bottom edge of these 2. So you want to keep this in the round. We're not sewing the 2 pieces together. Keep it just as a single layer. The next thing we're going to do for all of our caps is find the top with the markings there. At the bottom here, we're going to fold the edge up 5 centimetres or 2 inches. If you have a cover stitch machine, then you would actually just fold this fabric up without overlocking it first. And you would use the cover stitch machine to finish up this hem and do that double row of stitching, which is what you can see here. So rather than overlocking like I've done here, I've just used my cover stitch machine to sew all of those rows in one go. Not everybody has one, so this is how we're going to do it without it. Line up that side seam and measure 2 inches or 5 centimetres, and we'll start pinning this in place. Okay, so the bottom edges of all of these 3 caps are ready to be stitched. If you have a cover stitch machine, you can leave this raw and then do a nice cover stitched edge on your cap. I'm going to take all of these to my sewing machine and do 2 rows of stitching, so it will give that cover stitched look on the outside. Let's go do that. So I'm going to turn my cap the right way out, and I'm going to sew with the overlocked edges faced up, and I'm going to sew close to the top edge of this row of stitching. So I can end this here with just 1 row of stitching, but stretch garments always look nicer with that second row, so that's what we're going to do next. If you have a zigzag machine, then you might want to use one of these twin needles instead. So what that does is it'll stitch the 2 rows of straight stitch, but it will also zigzag underneath as well. But this machine doesn't do a zigzag, so I'm just going to do 2 rows of straight stitching. So what I'm doing now is lining up the left edge of my presser foot with the row of stitching that I've just done, and I'm going to use that as my guide to sew another row of straight stitches, and I hope that that's going to stitch nice and straight. So if I use the edge of the foot here along the edge of that row of stitching I've done, it should be nice and straight, and that will be about 1/4 of an inch away from the first row of stitching. I could, of course, turn the hat inside out, but I find that the stitches on opposite side of the fabric aren't exactly the same. They're not identical, so I'm going to stick with this side. All right, the band is done along the edge of our caps, and I'm going to show you the difference between sewing both layers from this side and doing one of each side on this one. So when I said to you that the stitching isn't exactly the same, this is the first row I've stitched, which looks really nice there, but that was sewn from the inside, whereas the next row was sewn from the outside. Doesn't look so nice on the outside, but it's much nicer on the inside. So to have a nice even consistency, you want to do either the outside for both or the inside. It's completely up to you, but it is much more difficult to sew from the outside and keep everything nice and even. But this one here is the one without any overlocked edges, and it still looks quite neat. And there we have our overlocked edges on the inside. It's a messy job because I've got my home overlocker here and it's a little bit loopy. So you do want to have your overlocked stitches nice and neat like this. What we can do now is turn our cap inside out, line up the top edge nice and evenly, and find those markings that we made earlier. And what we're going to do is stitch those little markings in place. We'll go and do that now. I've reduced my stitch length back down to about 2.9. So where that first mark is, I'm just going to do a back stitch, go forward a couple of stitches and back stitch again. And that's it. Then we'll go to the next mark. And the next. And the last one will be right on the inside of that stitching line. All right, we've stitched these little spots in place. Now we have a few little openings in the top of our cap. Take the side that has the seam on it, open that out, and the next one where the stitching is, and we're going to line up this stitching line with those stitches we've just made. And I'll clip that layer together and this one as well. Then we'll line up that stitching line with the next stitching line. So I'll just open those wings out, line that up in the centre, and line up that little wing as well, clip that together, keep that in place, and we'll clip this side together. We'll do the same with the next one. I might swap it out for pins, they're a bit lighter. So we've got the first section pinned, the second section, open that out again and line up this stitching line with the next. Spread that out and we'll pop a pin in there. And we'll do the same on the other side. So we have 3 sets of pleats so far, and the last one, find the centre at the end, we'll pop a pin in there, and then we can open that up and line up this pin with this stitching at the top here, and open that out, pop a pin in there as well, and on the other side. And what we have now are 4 pleats. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. What we're going to do at the machine now is take each pleat individually. So we'll take that one, and you're only going to sew right on the very top edge, just like we did when we were joining the top of the cap together. You only want to sew the very top edge. Next one, you'll do that as well. You'll keep on going until you've stitched all of those 8 pleats together. So just really close to the edge is all you need to sew. And move each one out of the way so that you can do the next. All right, there's just one more thing we need to do. So we've got these little pleats stitched in place along here. And with this hat that's got no overlocked or zigzagged edges, I've done the same. So you can do it going up and down, or you can also go straight across. It really doesn't matter which way you go, as long as you get those little pleats stitched. So what we'll do now is take the first pleat, open that out, grab the next one, and we'll open that out as well. Place those layers together, lining them up nice and evenly. Grab the next pleat, line that up as well. So you're going to line up all of these pleats evenly. And we'll clip those layers together. And you might think that you're never going to be able to sew through this, but because this is a soft cotton interlock, you won't have any problems. I'll do the same with this one. And now that those are ready, what we're going to do is sew straight across here. You don't need to go all the way to the outside edge. From about halfway on this side to about the halfway mark on this side, and just sew straight across. We're going to sew right on the edge of the stitching line. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. I'll also back stitch across the centre where the seam is. And we're finished. This one will be even easier because it's a much lighter fabric. All right, that's all finished. We can turn this the right way out. And that's the top of your hat with all of these little pleats. And this is the one that doesn't have any overlocking, just the raw seams. And then we've got that one there. And this one here is the one done in 3 layers. It will look much nicer if you have an overlocker that doesn't loop so much. But it'll look great from a distance. All right, time to try on these caps. This is the one that's got the bands going around with the decorative stitching on the outside. This is also one that's got the bands. It's done in 3 different sections, but it doesn't have any decorative stitching. It's got the overlocking on the inside. And because it's a printed fabric, you can't really tell. And for that reason, I wanted the decorative stitching on the outside, even though it doesn't look that great. I'll just wear this one to bed. This is the one that doesn't have any overlocking, no bells or whistles, just all straight stitch sewing. Also fits nicely and it looks fine as well. You wouldn't know that it wasn't done with a cover stitch machine or with an overlocker. And this is the one with the overlocked edges. And this is also a little bit heavier fabric as well. So there you go. Couple of really quick caps, whether you want it with different coloured bands or just decorative stitching or just as one solid piece. Very easy to make. They'll take you less than 10 minutes. So my next question, since I'm losing so much hair and I'm going to be as bald as a badger in the next week or so, would you rather me wear something on my head? Let me know. I'll probably be doing a mixture of videos where I will have caps on or sometimes I may not. Let me know what your preference is. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.